Here we got a 2x6 rafter that's busted in the attic, and I'm scabbing on what they call sistering another 2x6 on here, and I'm going to screw it on and then put bolts. But that's a 2x6 that it's a rafter and it has a split in it right down here. So it's just tacked in place with a couple screws. I put some a whole bunch of 1/4-inch bolts through there with big washers and pull it tight. Rafter, it's been there since the mid-80s, since Hurricane Elena, when they put a bunch of shingles on the roof and they busted the rafter there. Okay, there's the start. There's 2 carriage bolts. Actually, they're hex heads, so I can get the other end. Got large washers on there on the 2x6s. Okay, what I've got here, these are 1/4-inch bolts. Got a large washer and a regular 1/4-inch washer, so the load's distributed on here. Purposely use 1/4-inch bolts instead of something bigger, so it's a kind of a more gentle spring in the tightness of the bolt. It'll hold the preload better. So I'm going to put a whole bunch of bolts down through here. Bolt this together. You can see there's already a crack here from the original thing, but this is just trying to make sure this doesn't deflect. I've roofed already up to one point down there, and so I had to go in there and clip some of the nails off, nail heads with but here I've gone through and got the what they call the sister board hooked on. I've got a wrench tightening that up, so I go ahead and put bolts all the way down to the bottom there. Okay, I'm using a 5/16 inch drill, so there's plenty of the board wants to move around, I can bull it in place. We got a 1/4-inch, 4-inch long bolts because I had to pull this in a lot. 2 2x4s is only 3. These are regular bolts are threaded all the way, which I happen to find, which are kind of cool. Got the big washer to keep the bearing, distribute the load over the wood. Then I got a regular 1/4-inch washer just so that that doesn't deform. That works really well to tighten it up and keep the preload so this isn't just pull through the wood. And I'm going to put a whole sequence of these along the this is what they call the sister board, along here, and there's the cracked one. It's 118 right now up in here, so bear with me. It's hot as hell up in here, to be blunt. I prefer not to use glue. I guess if this was nice and in a lab or something, I'd use glue. This third lag screw I put in, this is tight. Now this guy's loose, so I'm going to tighten these 2 up, get a little bit of tension on them again, because you don't want to have just one bolt holding it. Now these are just temporary to pull this gap together before I bore the main bolts in here, which will actually hold this. So these are not intending this to be structural. This is just, I want to get the old split 2x6 in line before this sister board is completely married to it. This is the 5/16 inch pilot hole. I drilled these earlier, but then didn't like where the crack was. And I've got the 4-inch long 1/4 20s with a big washer on them. You can tell I'm in a tight space here. I'm going to feed this through. Put the big washer on. And the small washer, just so it's got some good bearing on there. Here's the stuff I'm working on right here. I don't have any space in here, so you lose the nuts. Okay, here's a double washer. So I've got enough bearing on here to clamp this cracked board to the sister board. Now down here when I first started off, I had some that only had one big fender washer. And I'm swapping these out right now just so I do it right. And here's one right here. You can see it's kind of cone shaped. What that's from is because I didn't have another little washer behind it. So if you put a big fender washer and another washer behind it, like on here, you can get more clamping force. It won't tend to creep down into the wood. And so what I want on here is I want these to be clamped together for all time, because that's what really keeps the shear and moment on the replacement beam. Now, if I had enough space, I'd got in here and try to glue them together, but I just wonder how long-term glue is going to work in the hot attic. But so I've just gone old school and bolted these together. But I've got a small diameter bolt, 1/4 and you torque it up the proper torque such that you don't break in the bolt, but you get a lot of preload on there. Then you have these fender washer distribute the load in a smaller washer so it doesn't go through and warp the other washer. What you really want is a metal plate, would be even better, and then have these on there so that with time the tension will still be clamping these two together. There's the finished job with the crack in the 2x6 rafter and the spliced on sister board. Went up way farther because of that's where there's a lot more bending going on. It's unsupported. There's the new sister board with all the giant fender washers. It goes all the way up to here. That's to replace the cracked rafter. There's the old board. What's weird is that the sister board is drawn all the way up, and then this other one's about an extra 1/4 inch, not as deep. It must have shrunk over time. But that's a 2x6. And there's the crack way down. And I put this temporary 2x4 here across the other rafters. I might just leave that in place, I'm not sure. But if I gotta go replace an air conditioner, it's kind of in the way. This is kind of a hallway in an attic. But what it is I use that to kind of pull this up so it's snug up here. I put a bevel in there because I was going to put it on the other side and think it was going to stick out farther, but ended up flipping around the other way. So that's just kind of a goof up. That doesn't really make any difference. It comes fairly close to the edge here. There's a little bit of a gap in there because the board's actually, the width is slightly different. This older 2x6 has actually shrunk across the grain. Maybe it's dried out after many, many years. Gobs and gobs of decades. So this was my jack. I put a 2x4 across the other ones. And what I did is pull back so this is in focus. I went through and put a 2x4 from here to here to here, and when I did that, before I did this, this was hanging down about to here. So I put this 2x4 across the other rafters, and that pushed this all the way up, so this was flush. And then I had to go ahead and squeeze this. I could have used a C-clamp. What I did is I bored these through and use an extra long threaded rod and pull that tight. And once I had one of these in place, you can see I hammered it right here. Kind of hammer it with a hammer. You see there's another split into this. That's why I kind of went really far here on this splice, just to make sure I went far enough. But that goes all the way up and has another support down here. So it's got a back support here to a load-bearing wall. It's a bunch of cables through there. So it's only the span from here down. Before this thing was fixed here in this crack, this thing was sagging like a son of a gun. It's about a 12 feet from there to this support over here. And then it goes all the way up to the roof peak. Comes back down. Okay, I removed the temporary board to jack it up. And so there's the completed sister board on the broken rafter. It didn't move down very much, but it's all in place. Got the large fender washers. There it is in there. So you got a lot of clamping force here. I purposely didn't want to put a bunch of screws in there because I don't want to really split it, the old board, but also all these bolts have a lot of clamping force to clamp this together. So this becomes actually stiffer than the original beam. So I figured if it had cracked once, it's already got a crack over here. It might crack it again, so further up. So it's easier just to scab on this extra sister board. Got gobs of bolts. A little bit of overkill, but this has just been bugging me. So I got it fixed.